Welcome to we'll try that again. Welcome to the Mandatory Social Interaction Show. I'm your host, Eric, along with my plucky co-host, Tim.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, Tim. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Eric. How are you doing?
Good. So it's been a busy-ass week, I think, for you and for me.
Yeah.
Ben is not... Ben is not here this week. He's got some family things to attend, so it's just Tim and myself. Last week...
Why would you spend time with your family?
Yeah,
Come
really.
on.
I mean, priorities, right?
Absolutely unacceptable.
And also, as far as last week goes, both Tim and Ben couldn't make it last week, so we just decided to skip a week. So sorry to anyone who is disappointed by that, but you know, stuff happens.
We are hopeful that next week we will all be back on a more regular schedule.
Yeah, probably. And you know that I mean, stuff happens. Like that's you know, the important thing is we keep going. So that's what we're doing.
We're all a bunch of busy fools, so.
Yeah, totally. And one thing I wanted to talk about, speaking of busy weeks, is you just launched a thing this week.
Yeah, so might as well self-plug, right? So I restarted the Encircling Theater podcast, which I had started a long time ago with my buddy George, and that was actually the start of my brand of Encircling Theater. It was originally a podcast where we would just talk about topics in gaming, and we'd bounce off each other, and you know we'd kind of do what we do here, really. Like we'd bring up points, and one of us would play devil's advocate, and we'd kind of go back and forth on. But it was just very gaming focused. It was all about gaming. There was no other real target. It wasn't like this where we can kind of talk about content, we can talk about games, we can talk about movies, we can talk about whatever we want on MSIS. You know, MSIS is kind of our excuse to just hang out and talk about stuff and do it in a way that we can introduce it, you know, our communities and all that stuff. But the ICT podcast, I decided I really wanted to get back into doing my podcast, but this time I want to do it solo because I've never done a solo podcast, and I really like listening to solo podcasts, especially from people who know what they're talking about, which I don't really, but I wanted to try. So I'm working on giving it a go and trying out doing a solo podcast for a bit and see how that goes. And you know, if it needs to change into something with more people, it.
Yeah. Hey Tim, your gate is activating a little too much. So when you kind of go down at the end of a sentence, we're kind of losing you.
Hopefully that'll fix it.
Okay, cool. We got most of what you said, and I don't think you need to repeat anything, but I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's my it actually adjusted itself up. I had it lower than that.
Okay. Fair enough.
Discord.
So I listened to your so-called podcast. No, I listened to your show this morning, and it's great. I really like it. Not that I expected it to be bad. But I
did.
But I expected it to be bad. No, it was actually really good. It was super informative. It was interesting, the WHO diagnosis. And what's interesting to me, I don't want to get, I mean, you covered it really well in your podcast, so I don't think we need to cover it here. And I'll definitely put a link in the show notes to Tim's podcast. If you look up Encircling Theater on Anchor, you can certainly find it there right now. And I think it's going to be pushed out to more venues going forward, like Google Play, and I know iTunes, you said, and I think Spotify as well. Is that a thing?
Yeah. Yep. I'm hopeful. Hopefully, I don't know what the process is, but they Anchor is like, we'll push it out to all the platforms for you, and I have had no indication that it's going to work, so I opened up a ticket with them. So I don't know. We'll find out soon enough, I guess.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I mean, and so one thing I can say I've done, having done a few podcasts, a few audio podcasts, is a lot of that stuff is one-time setup stuff. And once you kind of iron out the kinks, it becomes a lot easier.
It's funny you mention that because I ended up spending like 2 hours extra on accident, getting all the audio stuff worked out and making it sound the way I wanted, and getting, figuring out intro, like getting the intro music, because I had lost my intro music. It's on a hard drive somewhere, and Ben made it for me. I commissioned him to make it for me a while back. And then the outro music was I messaged Ben. I'm like, Ben, can I have an outro song? And he just gave me one of his songs to use. But he picked one. He's like, yeah, this works. I'm like, all right, I'll go with it. So it was pretty funny. So it was funny because I was making poor Ben do work for me while I was in the middle of me recording this thing. It was pretty funny. But it's cool. It's a cool thing. I never thought I'd be like doing an audio only podcast really ever again. Because that's how ICT started. ICT in general was that it started out as an audio only thing. Then we moved to YouTube, and then we went to Twitch and did it live. So it's really nice because as an audio only podcast, it's just me and a mic. Like there's no stress to perform or look at a camera or whatever. It's literally just you sit in front of a mic and just talk, and you pick something that you're passionate about and you talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so one thing that I commend you for is doing a one mic podcast. That is something I've wanted to do, and I've had a hard time coming up with, because it's having someone in front of me or next to me, or just even hearing them in headphones. It's like you have this thing to react against. So, and when I say react, I don't mean like, you say something and I automatically go, no, but it's having that like conversational, someone is prompting you and then you're prompting them, and there's a back and forth. The topic right now, Jank, is really Tim's podcast. He just started up the ICT podcast again, and it's super good. You should check it out. It's on Anchor and soon to be in multiple other places where you get, where you get podcasts. Doing a one mic show is hard because you kind of have to talk to the wall or talk to yourself and make it interesting for other people to listen to. And you did a good job. It was fun to listen to. You were engaging. I felt like you were talking to me and not like, it's really easy to get to do a one mic podcast and have it be very dry.
That was the challenge, and I actually was inspired by if you've ever heard of Hardcore History by Dan Carlin.
Oh, sure.
And that he's my inspiration for doing this. I actually originally, and I still do have in the works, a video games history podcast, and I've actually written it's pretty much like it's a podcast that is going to cover like every topic is going to be like 2 30-minute to an hour long episodes, maybe more depending on how long they've been around. And so like my first episode I've been working on is Bungie, and I mean I haven't touched it in like 2 years at this point, but I have almost the entire script written, and like it's just this great history of Bungie as a company, where it started, where it came from, different little like blips in their history that a lot of people don't really know about, because they just kind of go, that's a video game company, they just make games, and rather than just brushing that off, I wanted to kind of touch on what makes these companies as fascinating as they are and why they have such like rabid fan bases. But that said, that's why I started writing for that, is because I wanted to do a solo podcast. But with my stream schedule, my work schedule, and everything else that I do, having a wife and dogs and a house to keep up with and everything, writing and doing all the research became infeasible, at least for now. So I was kind of jonesing to do the solo thing again. And I was like, with all the absolute negativity flying around about the WHO's gaming disorder, thing that they put into the IDC 11 or whatever it is.
Right.
When they threw that in there, and just people like just so much misinformation and just rampant lack of knowledge and just vitriol towards it was just astounding. And I was like, this is the time, because it was something that I had struggled with when I was younger, and I thought it was a great time to really cover the topic. And why not do it? Why not do it when I've got the energy and I've got the time. So
Yeah.
I threw a little bit of research into it, but it was mostly personal anecdote because I've been there, and it made it really easy. And so I'm feeling pretty excited about it, though. I think it'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really good. It was very informative. One thing that I thought was interesting is there are some parallels. So first of all, the interesting thing to me is the way the gaming community reacts to these things. And maybe we can talk about that versus the WHO stuff specifically, but some background. So the WHO gaming disorder?
Yep.
Is similar to internet gaming disorder in the DSM?
Yeah, it was internet gaming disorder in the DSM-5.
So, and what it basically says is gaming can be an addictive thing similar to other addictive things. And it gives some definition to that addiction. It's basically like the same way they define alcoholism.
Or gambling addiction, too.
Or gambling addiction.
It's almost identical to gambling addiction in that regard.
Where it basically says, hey, this is a thing that can be addictive, and here are the indications that it's an addiction. And there are things like it's affecting you outside, it's affecting your ability to work. It's affecting your ability to have family relationships. It's always about, in most of these things, it's about your ability to kind of function in society is being impaired by this other thing.
Right. Which is when it becomes harmful to the person.
Right.
And,
exactly.
And that's the whole definition of it. It's like it's not saying it's not giving a hard limit on how long you've spent playing games in a week. Like, yeah. I knew that a couple of media outlets were like, oh, if you play games for more than 20 hours a week, you're addicted. And it's like, no, that it has to be diagnosed by an actual doctor.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
Like an actual real PhD has to say, you're probably suffering from this. Let's get you help. Rather than, you just self-diagnose like WebMD style, thanks to some media outlet saying, oh, well, my son plays Fortnite for 20 hours a week, therefore he's addicted. And it's like, no, exactly. That's not what that means.
And that's the thing is people tend to conflate these things. And one of the things I wanted to, I kind of wanted to bring up in relation to this, and this is slightly tangential. So, I mean, it's not about disease necessarily or addiction. But it's more about the gaming community's reaction to things and how the narrative gets shaped. So I don't know if you know this, but PUBG. I guess it's Bluehole Group. Bluehole Group is suing Epic about Fortnite. And the interesting thing to me is not that there's a lawsuit. It's the way the lawsuit is being portrayed, because just to go briefly into it, the lawsuit is essentially, hey, PUBG was developed alongside Epic because we used Epic's engine, Unreal Engine 4, I guess it is. Mm-hmm. And so they had close contact with Epic while they were in development, trying to, Epic is like assisting them, right? They're a vendor, right? So you're paying Epic to say, hey, we need support for the engine. We need to, maybe they're helping them, figure out how to do things. And that's perfectly valid. The problem is then Epic turned around and published their own Battle Royale game. And PUBG is going like, well, wait a minute. There's a conflict of interest here where we're trusting you and showing you our ideas, and now you're taking them and making your own game out of it.
Right.
So that's the actual basis of the lawsuit. It's not, and it gets portrayed in the gaming community as, PUBG wants to own the Battle Royale space, and anyone who makes a Battle Royale game is, they're gonna sue them to try, and that's totally not what it's about.
Right.
It's about a business conflict of interest. It has nothing to do with the genre. And as a matter of fact, at least one of the PUBG people, and I don't remember the person's name, was quoted like not that long ago as saying like, yeah, we want more battle royale games. We think it's cool. We think it's a cool genre, and we'd like that space to grow. And so like PUBG is not, Bluehole is not like trying to own the battle royale genre. But it gets portrayed that way everywhere.
Well, and that's part of the problem is that the misinformation is so easily spread, especially when it comes to the gaming community, because they want to latch on to the most negative narrative.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole WHO thing comes in, is that so many people were like, oh, well, because the media says it. And it's like, but if that's the problem is that we've been so conditioned as a gaming community as a whole that everyone outside of gaming, anybody who doesn't play video games, is trying to destroy video games.
Yeah.
And regardless of, whether it's accurate or not, the ridiculous part is that whenever something comes out that says, oh, well, Bluehole just wants to own all of it, is the same as, oh, EA hates consumers, and is the same thing as, the WHO just wants to classify everyone as a gaming addict and make it so people can't play games anymore. And it's like, that's not what it is. Like, stop looking at the negative and realize that they're just trying to, Bluehole's trying to protect their assets and make sure that they get a slice of the money that maybe their ideas fueled another game, so therefore illegally fueled another game, so therefore they should get a slice of the profits. That's reasonable. That's typical business. The WHO is trying to help people who may actually have a problem.
Exactly.
It makes no sense to me. It's just one of those things where as gaming in general, we just need to take a step back and be like, whoa, we need to chill and do some research. And it's so much easier to just click, it's the same crap that happens on Facebook. When somebody spreads a piece of misinformation, it's so easy to hit share and have outrage than it is to actually do the work and research it and figure out what it really means.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the
Oh, well, I actually forgot my second point, but with EA, I mean, they're not anti-consumer. If they were anti-consumer, then nobody would buy their games anymore. So that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, and that's one thing about EA, EA's thing, the recent thing with EA was isn't that the loot boxes in Star Wars, whatever it is, Battlegrounds 2?
In Battlefront 2, yeah.
Battlefront 2, that's it.
Yep.
Don't
get me started.
No. And I'm not, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I certainly don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Because I could rant for hours.
And I will be honest with you that there's, so the way they did the loot box thing in that game, probably not the greatest. But one thing to keep in mind is that EA is a company, and as much as we want them to deliver something that we want to play, and they want to meet that need too, they also need to be able to afford to make money. I mean, they have to make money. They're a company.
Yes,
that's what they're supposed.
They're a publicly traded company, so they're beholden to shareholders as well.
Yeah.
So there's that too.
So
that's a big piece of the puzzle that's missing for a lot of folks. Is publicly traded means that they're not the ones calling the shots. Ultimately, it's a board of directors that's calling the shots.
Yeah.
So you can't you can hold them accountable for having crappy practices, but don't utterly destroy their business when they try to backpedal and fix it, like they did with Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
And then just be like, they suck. They're a horrible company. They're terrible. And it's like, but other companies like Ubisoft and even Microsoft have had their moments of absolute garbage. And I mean, I don't see people being outraged about them still. So it's like, just let it be. They tried to fix it. They're trying to make it better.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Give them the leeway to do so, because they'll never get better if we don't let them try. And I think that's the whole lesson that I try to preach a little bit, because I do get really preachy with it. But ultimately, I like EA's products. I don't necessarily like their business practices, but with their latest CEO that has taken over, I believe it is a lady. I think she has done a really good job with turning the company around. It has a ways to go, but compared to where they were in the mid 90s, early 2000s, holy crap, they're way better.
Yeah.
They were horrible in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Well, and like I was saying, it's like their company, they have to every game they release must have a revenue model, and if they're going to release it, I don't know if and one thing to kind of think about is like there's an extra credits where they talk about why do games cost $60. And if you actually add up what they should cost, it's like 80 or $100.
Yeah, should cost way more.
And one of those things, I mean, loot boxes are one of the ways that game companies are trying to make up that difference and saying, okay, we can keep the price point at $60, but we need to make up we need to make up that revenue differential so that we can actually make money on the game and not break even or lose money. And
that's what microtransactions, loot boxes, DLC, season passes, all that stuff is there to supplement that $60 price tag. Because it gets you in the door, but it doesn't necessarily buy you the whole package. And it shouldn't, because AAA titles are expensive.
Yeah, and that's all
there is to it.
And that's unfortunately the thing is people just kind of forget. Yeah, that's the thing, Jank. Exactly. The $60 price point has been it's been that way for probably 15 years, maybe more. Thanks, Pizza. That's the link to that extra credits episode is in the chat. And the thing is, EA screwed up. I mean, they absolutely didn't do right by their audience.
I mean, I don't know if you could reasonably defend that mistake, but they tried to fix it.
and the thing is, companies just like people make mistakes. I mean, that's unfortunately that's the thing. And
if you think about design by committee, you're more prone to make mistakes because design by committee is you're empowering. Instead of one person to use their entire brain, you're empowering 50 people to use a 50th of their brain, and that doesn't really work that well.
And one of the things is that the outrage. I guess one thing that I guess something that I kind of live by is that the punishment should fit the crime. And the outrage on the internet about these things from gamers is so far out of proportion to what the actual problem was.
Yeah.
And granted,
I think they were kicking babies or something.
Yeah, and one of the things that drives me nuts about gaming culture is really that sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
Where people think they are entitled to a thing. They think it's like, no, you make a game that I want to play, or if you're going to do loot boxes, then they have to be done this way or else. And it's like...
A really interesting quote I heard from a developer is, the game you want me to make is shit.
Yeah.
Because it your idea doesn't necessarily translate into a fun experience.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially if you have 3,000 angry fanboys saying, I want this, I want this, I want this, you're going to have a horrible mess of a game. It's not going to be coherent.
Well, and that's one of the problems is you've got, 3,000 people who are yelling really loud, and everybody else who buys the game, which is another 97,000 people, or a million or 2 million people.
Millions of people buy these games, AAA titles.
So you got 3,000 people speaking for 1.5 million people.
Yes.
And I'm not defending EA, and I'm not defending loot boxes, and I'm honestly not defending any of the things you're outraged about. Come at me, bro. But like. I'm not like defending that stuff, but it's like I see this stuff. So one of the things I do is, and I think I've mentioned this in the past, I tend to buy old games. I buy games that are 2, 3, 4 years old. I don't want to pay that $60 price point. I'm generally less concerned about multiplayer stuff. I'm more of a single player than a multiplayer guy. So I don't care. I'll buy a $20 or $10 game from 5 years ago and really enjoy it, and I'm not worried about like being caught up with all my friends who are playing the same game. Typically, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but for the most part, that's my theory. So I see a lot of these things that happen, like pre-orders and DLC and the loot box thing with the EA, with the Star Wars game, and I see all these things kind of as an outsider because I don't do that stuff.
Right. You typically stick to what's been popular and gone by.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Generally easier to scoop up.
Generally, and that's just the way I do it, and that's the way I want. That's the way I budget my entertainment money. And the thing is, as an outsider, I just look at this and go, man, you guys are so overly entitled. Like, you think the game developers owe you something, and they don't. Yeah. They're making a product and trying to sell it.
Eric, don't forget that the people that EA pissed off are not only just entitled gamers, it's entitled Star Wars fanboys too.
Oh, well, that's true.
And
that's true. That was a double whammy.
As much as I am a huge Star Wars fan, but I am not one of those guys who is like threatening the girl who played Rose and getting her kicked off, getting her to leave Instagram.
That is horrible.
Isn't it? And the same thing. Have you heard about the people that want to remake Star Wars Episode 8?
That just hurts.
Have you heard about it, though?
No, I haven't. I haven't. This is the first I've heard about it.
It's hilariously sad. So it's this Twitter account that's called like Remake Star Wars Episode 8 or something like that. And they go into this whole thing where they're like, our producers have enough money to support this. However, if you were willing to pledge an amount, how much would you pledge? And these people all go on, and it's like the options are like $5, $10, $100, $1,000, $10,000. And so it's literally, you don't put in any info. You don't even have to give a valid email. You just like, you go in, and so they have like $30 million on this thing. It's like no real money. It's just they would pledge.
Got it.
They actually want to take it to Disney and get the rights to remake the movie. It is so funny, but all it is powered by a bunch of entitled, whiny fanboys who think that they have every right in the art that is produced by someone else.
Yeah.
And the problem is that you either you take it and you consume it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to love it. You can be critical of it. However, you have no right to tell an artist that their art is wrong. Like that is something that they created. Yeah. That is their right to say, this is what I created. I hope you like it, but you don't have to. And people like Rian Johnson, people like J.J. Abrams, they're all the same way in that regard, that they do their best and make something that they think has potential and merit.
Yeah.
And for people to do that is the most mind-blowingly narcissistic, selfish thing I have ever heard of in my life. And when I heard that, I was like, I am so ashamed to like Star Wars. I don't even understand how these people get so delusional that they think that they can control this. And Pizza says, is like the remake Episode 1 without Jar Jar? No, they want to reshoot the whole thing from the ground up. Get the same actors, reshoot it, all the locations. They want to do all the work, all new CGI, completely new story.
It's hilarious.
They're so adamant that the story in 8 was bad, which it's not. That said, there are plot holes, but the only reason that they're doing this is because they don't like that it's a diverse cast, and they don't like that, somebody decided to do something different with the characters. It's like if every whiny basement dwelling troglodyte decided to crawl out of the woodwork and start complaining about Star Wars at the same time. And it's just, I just can't believe it. Like, I'm just like, what is going on? Like, get some sunlight and drink some orange juice. You need it, please, for the love of God.
So here's something that I think is funny, just in what you said.
Yeah.
So they're allowed to pledge whatever amount of money they want.
Yes.
And they managed to get, quote unquote, $30 million.
Yes.
And
so the movie cost $200 million.
The movie cost $250 million to make.
And they said that they have the money. The pledge is just to show what you would be willing to pay. So they said that they have enough money from their producers, whatever that means, producers.
Yeah.
And so it's so funny because they're so self-confident, and I want a camera to be in that boardroom when they go meet with the Disney reps and get laughed out of it. It'll be the funniest thing.
I doubt that meeting even happens.
Oh, it never will. It never will. But
yeah,
still very funny.
It's and it's funny. I mean, like that's the thing that drives me nuts about. I guess I mean, and Jank in the chat here is saying he looked at a discussion, and I'm not sure what he means by he looked into a discussion about it. I don't know if he means he saw one somewhere or if he was thinking about doing that on his own thing. But how fandom itself is toxic, because it's based around forming an identity based off of engagement with a piece of media, which is a weird way to have an identity. And I do want to address that a little bit. So here's part of the problem is that is a way, identifying with art is a way that we establish our identity. That just and there's I guess the it kind of boils down to, like most things in life, balance. Is
Yes.
There's an appropriate amount of appreciation for a thing where it's like, yes, I really liked that thing you did and it's great.
Yes.
And then there's a point where it's out of balance and you take it too far and it's like,
Well, it can't be your whole identity, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't base yourself around Star Wars. Like you can be passionate about it, you can love it, but like you gotta, I mean, do you have friends, family, a job, hobbies outside of Star Wars? Like a fandom is not a hobby. I'm sorry, but a fandom is being passionate about something, and you can build hobbies around that. Like you make craft work or
cosplay,
costuming or that sort of stuff. It's making that your identity is insane to me. And I'll be honest, I knew people like that.
Yeah.
I was in the 501st for 6 years, and I mean, I love the organization. It's a costuming club that dresses up as the bad guys from Star Wars, and they generally they go and do parades and visit children's hospitals and make people smile, and it's a great place. It's just some of the people were way over the top about it, and it's like they would be the ones that would go on and yell at, I think it was Kelly Marie Tran, about her portrayal of Rose and saying horrible things to her and telling her she's a terrible actress and all that stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if they were involved. Not all of them, and I'm not lumping them all. I'm just saying some. So please keep that in mind, because the 501st is full of amazing, wonderful, good-hearted people. But there was a fringe faction of crazies in there, just as with any group.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's, yes, make your identity about things that you like. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to realize that you're an amalgam of those things. And if you like all of one thing, and that's all you want, and that's all you're into, you're not a very well-rounded person.
Right.
I mean, I get being into Star Wars or being into comics or whatever, but you gotta branch out, man. Like I'm a Star Wars fan, but I also like Star Trek and Marvel and Marvel movies anyway. I'm the only person in the world who liked Man of Steel.
Yes, you were.
Which is fine. That's okay. I liked Watchmen. Apparently, I'm okay with Zack Snyder.
I never watched that one.
Watchmen's good. It's really good. I really liked it. Everyone will tell you it sucks, but I liked it.
It's on my list. I've heard from some people it was good. So
it's really good. I really liked it. And the thing is, that's one of those things about did you ever see? This is really old, and it might predate you a little bit, but there is a famous Saturday Night Live sketch where William Shatner got up in front of an audience of Star Trek nerds, and they're this is Saturday Night Live, right? So it's not a real audience, but they get in front. He gets up and tells all the Trekkies to get a life. And everybody, at the time it was hugely, everybody thought it was really funny, and but the thing is, there's an honest to God core of truth in there, where it's like, you know, and you know, going back to gaming, right? It's like, you guys need to don't making this stupid game that's coming out your entire life, like No Man's Sky, like,
yeah,
the fact that people got so worked up about it, and I get it, you bought the game, you didn't like it, but the fact that people like this always kills me too, is that people buy the hype. People buy the hype. How do you buy hype? How does anybody in 2018 on anything about anything it doesn't matter what the thing is, games, movies,
you are completely right,
books,
like, there's no reason to buy into the hype machine anymore.
You know, and the thing is Pizza, you're right, the argument's not about that it was bad, the argument's about that the hype didn't match the product. And the thing is, why do you spend $100 on a game that hasn't come out yet, and then the game doesn't, you know, the game's not the end all be all, you're not like, you know, suddenly willing to like sacrifice your, you know, firstborn child to it, and then you complain because you spent $100 on a game you didn't like, and it's like,
well, can I sidebar real quick?
Sure, yeah.
So I think part of the problem with No Man's Sky,
this show is nothing without sidebars.
Yeah, well, but I think part of the problem with No Man's Sky wasn't that people bought into hype. It was that the creators outright lied about what it would deliver, and that was a big problem.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, like, yes, there were people that bought into the hype regardless, but I don't think it would have been nearly as popular if they had not lied about it. And I mean, lying is a big problem, but that also stems into a deeper discussion about pre-order culture and how that's, you know, flawed in its own. But that said, I don't want to derail too bad, but that said, not 100% of No Man's Sky was all hype. There were lies spread by the creators of it that were completely inaccurate, like legitimate, complete fallacies. So
yeah.
Sidebar over. Sorry, I just wanted to bring that up so people who are wondering understand that we know the history of it. It's just, you know, for those listening, that's the background. You know?
Yeah, and that's true. And maybe No Man's Sky is not the best, example, but you look at some of the other, talking about pre-order culture, look at some of the other things, and it's like, I don't remember what the exact games are, but they have these pre-order specials that are like, oh, if you order it from Amazon, you get this. If you order it from Walmart, you get this. And then it's like, if you want all the things, you have to pre-order it 4 times. And people do it.
Yeah.
And it's... Why? It's a game. I mean, I get...
It's a problem. It is an issue.
I get it being, identifying with like, oh, I really liked, I don't know, let's call it Destiny. I really liked the first Destiny, so I'm going to pre-order the second one. I mean, I kind of get that, but I also, like, pre-ordering, okay, you get some special skin or whatever the thing is. But, I mean, you spend an inordinate amount of money. You're guaranteed to spend the full price of the game if you pre-order. It's not like you're going to get a discount on a pre-order.
Right.
And... I don't know. It just never... It doesn't make sense to me. And I get that people identify with the thing, just like Star Wars and all the other stuff. But I don't understand why people don't engage some common sense when it comes to any of these things. Star Wars is a good example. I kept hearing, oh, Solo's not doing well. Solo is it's losing money for Disney, and it's not, and blah, blah, blah. And I went and saw it. It was great.
Yep.
And,
Do you know why that is? Do you know why, though? It's because of sour Star Wars fanboys.
Oh, yeah.
Who didn't want to have the story of Han Solo told in a way that didn't match their own narrative.
Exactly.
That's the problem with these fandoms. And I know we're all over the place in terms of topic, but that said, that's why. Anyways, back to you.
No. But that's exactly it. That's exactly the thing. Solo is a perfectly good movie. It's fun. It's action packed. I think Alden Ehrenreich was a credible Han Solo by the first 25 minutes of the movie, or 25% of the movie was done. I was like, I buy him as Han Solo. It's great.
Yeah, I think he did a bang up job.
And could it have been better? Of course. Could every movie you've ever seen have been better? Yeah, probably. If anything can be improved. The problem is, like, people have built this thing up in their heads so much that they don't judge it for what's on the screen, and it's like the pre-order thing. It's like they don't judge the fact that they got screwed over on the last 3 pre-orders they did. And I mean, and you do occasionally see some people say, like, oh, I'm never doing pre-orders again. I've gotten screwed too many times. But you would think that you get screwed once. You know what I mean?
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah, exactly. You would think that, like, you'd pay $100 for this pre-order and it wasn't everything you wanted it to be, and you'd go, like, I think World of Warcraft is one. Some of the expansions come out, and then it's like there's a literal $100 or $150 edition with a map and a this and a that.
Yep.
And it's like, dude, that's a lot of money to spend on a game that you literally spend money on every month.
Yeah. Well, the advantage of being a content creator and being a streamer is that I can write that stuff off now.
Well, that's
so
a different.
I'm okay to get the super editions.
That's a different. That's a different story.
I have an
though.
advantage.
Yeah, I mean that's a different thing.
Yeah.
But in terms of just general, like, gamer fandom culture, a lot of it I just don't get. I don't understand why people identify so hard with these things. Here's an example.
Yeah,
you don't see Rush fans beating up Metallica fans, right?
Mm.
Like you don't see people who are, ska fans, like getting online and going, man, country sucks. Ska's the only good music.
It's the only real genre.
It's the only real genre. Right?
I mean, that sounds a little like me. No, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there will always be tribalism, and I think that's a big part of it, is that people want to feel like they belong to a group, and tribalism makes you fiercely defendant of what you feel is your tribe. So for these hardcore Star Wars fans, and I call them hardcore, I should call them extreme, because I'm a hardcore Star Wars fan, because I love everything about Star Wars. But extreme Star Wars fans, because there are extremists in every group, right? Extreme Star Wars fans are the same ones who will go after people for disagreeing with them that this movie sucks or this piece of media is terrible. And it's the same way in every fandom, and that tribalism that gives them a sense of belonging, which they may not have. And in terms of the psychology of it, yes, these people may not have anything to belong to, and there's nothing wrong with community, and there's nothing wrong with making people feel like they belong. But when that becomes, like Hambrum said before, your identity, when it becomes all that you identify as, I am a Star Wars fan, that's the first thing you say to people. Back away quickly.
Yeah,
because
totally.
That means that they become like, that is all that matters to them. And if something disagrees with the way they see things, or with their own narrative or their own world point of view, then they will lash out at it. And like I said before, it's important to be critical. I think it's very important to be critical about pieces of media, pieces of art. However, you can be critical without being a dick.
Yeah, exactly. So. And, that's the thing. I mean, one thing I do want to say is it's okay, and maybe this will bring it all back around and we can tie it all together with this. It's okay to be critical of these things. It's okay to be critical of the WHO and the APA, of their definitions of gaming addiction. It's okay to be critical of EA's loot box strategy. It's okay to be critical of Solo. It's okay to be critical of these things. And we're not saying you have to like what we like, or that is not the message. The thing is, being critical of something is not the same thing as just yelling and screaming about it.
Yeah.
You know, being critical of something means you've looked at it and you've decided, and you've actually, like, you know, like, for instance, read the WHO's definition of gaming addiction, and you've decided, and you've looked at it and said, hey, some parts of this are troubling, some parts of this don't work for me, and here's why. And you actually have a well thought out, well crafted argument that's, you know, that's based on your opinion and not just your yelling and screaming. And it's the same thing with all the other stuff we talked about. It's like, being critical of these things is fine. Yelling at Kelly Marie Tran because you didn't like the way her character was written in a movie is not fine. That's just inexcusable behavior.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's the thing is looking at these. I think the overall thing here, I know we're kind of rambly today, but I think overall this topic is really about, I had it in my head and I lost it. That's why we're rambly today.
That's a metaphor for the show.
That's the whole show right there. No, I think the whole thing really is, that these things are, that people are not balanced with these things, and that the gaming culture and internet culture, and fandom culture, all of these things, all of these kind of cultures, you know, the kind of seem to bring out the worst in people, and seem to play on emotional arguments rather than, you know, factual or opinionated arguments. Because saying, there's a big difference between saying Star Wars Episode 8 sucks and Star Wars Episode 8, you know, I didn't like Star Wars Episode 8. Right. And I did like it, so please don't, that's not my opinion. But, like, there's a big difference between saying, you know, loot boxes suck, versus saying, you know, like, hey, I really don't like the way they did the loot boxes here, and here's my reasoning, because this, and that, and it's going to take me 40 hours to do what, you know, like, but whatever the thing is. And I think as a gaming culture, everybody needs to take a step back and realize that these things are not that important in real life. They're not.
You know, let me leave off with this thought. Okay, it's easy to get outraged.
Yeah.
What's not easy is to have a reason for why you're outraged. And I think that if you take the time and do the hard thing, then you're doing a service not only to yourself, but to the people that you are affecting your outrage on, even if it's contained outrage at that point. Because you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And you may grab the attention of other vocal, outspoken, outraged fans, but you won't necessarily grab the ear of the people who will listen to reason and, you know, actually look at it. In fact, you tend to galvanize the other side, the people that you are spraying vinegar all over. You tend to galvanize them against your point of view. Yeah. And I think that's something that's really important to take into account, is that if you really wish to make change in a fandom, in a game, in a company, you have to do it in a reasoned fashion, because most people, generally speaking, are reasonable. Most. Now, there are always those, the vocal minorities, that are not reasonable. However, I think for the most part, that if you have a well-reasoned argument, you can still be outraged, you can still be pissed off, but at least present your ideas in a fashion that's coherent and sensible, because people don't tend to respond well to outrage.
Yeah. And I mean, one other thing I would add to that is, it's hard for people to realize and understand, but the way stuff gets done for the most part is by compromise. It's not by, you know, one side imposing their will on the other side. Generally, it's, I have this viewpoint, you have that viewpoint. We need to find a place in the middle where we can agree, and do something there.
It doesn't always work, but it does nine times out of 10.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, that's not. I mean, these are generalities, right? This isn't.
Right.
You know, not everything works the same way all the time, but
Right.
you know, the thing is, if you pay attention, like, and here's a stupid example. People were kind of outraged about Jar Jar Binks, and in episode 2 and episode 3, he's got a much smaller role.
Yep.
And I think the outrage might be not the best way to accomplish that, but you know, there was a compromise. Like, we can't just kill him off, but we can make him a lot less pivotal to the story, you know, and much more of a smaller player.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
you know, it is what it is. So yeah. There you
That
go.
was a good talk. Holy crap! All right, that was a very roundabout talk, but it was a good one.
Yeah,
Wow.
I need a drink.
That
I need a drink now.
Took up the entire freaking episode. That was awesome.
Yeah, pretty much. That's we are almost at an hour. We're about 9 minutes short, and we don't have to hit an hour. So
Yeah. Wow, that was a good discussion. And
Yeah.
thanks chat for chiming in. Appreciate you
yeah,
guys.
chat. You guys, as always, you guys are amazing. I love doing this show and hearing all the different viewpoints and having people.
Sorry for the late start, by the way.
Yeah, but yeah, that happens. It's okay. And let's see. So yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. That's super cool. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Thanks to the mods, Pizza and L. We appreciate you. You guys are great.
Absolutely.
And
we'll be back next week with Ben Burns, right?
yeah, as far as I know, Ben should be here next week. We should be good to go. Let's see. We've reached our social interaction quota for the week. I'm no longer talking to anyone. So if you want to speak to me, you're going to have to wait till next week.
Except when you get into my chat and start flinging insults at me, right?
Yeah, exactly. Tim, where can people find you on the interwebs?
So you can find me on the ever so lovely Mixer. I am a partnered variety streamer there. Mixer.com/InsertCoinTheater. That's theater spelled like the American spelling, not the British spelling. You can also find me on Twitter at InsertCoinTim. And then on Discord, the ICT community hangs out outside of streams. So please feel free to join us. Discord.gg/ICT. We'd love to have you come hang out, read the rules, and make yourself a part. How about
Cool.
you, Eric?
I can be found on Twitter at ZaxxusEMK, on twitch.tv/ZaxxusEMK, and at youtube.com/EricKleinCreate, which is also where you can find the show. The show is available on Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts are sold. Our website is mandatorysocial.com. The theme song is Protofunk by Kevin Macleod. You can find him at incompetech.com. And the background music is by Ben Burns at abstractionmusic.com. Thanks as always for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll catch you next week.
See you next week.